All right. Good morning. Good morning. We had a wild day of football yesterday. I hope all of you guys out there clinched a playoff spot. Maybe you secured a bye in your playoffs as well. I'm in 5 leagues where I'm competing because I'm in a couple dynasty leagues where I'm tanking. But in the 5 leagues I'm competing, I secured a bye in 2 of them. And tonight I need a litany of things to go right for me to get into the playoffs in another. And then the other 2 I had, rough years in. So, today, week 14 recap, as always, lessons learned that we're going through right now. I think probably the biggest outlier and the biggest thing that we probably need to talk about today is Rashad Penny, because he was the number 1 running back on the week from the main slate. Obviously, Thursday night had Dalvin Cook. He was the number 1 running back. But from the slate on Sunday, Rashad Penny had the biggest performance. And I got lucky, I would say, and I actually started Rashad Penny in my home league en route to my bye clinching win this week. So, Rashad Penny, the role we saw him get, I mean, I don't know if it's sustainable or not, but what we saw was 35 of 61 snaps, so about 57%, ran a route about half the time, 14 to 30 routes run for the Seahawks, got 16 of the 28 carries, also received a target as well. So definitely worthy of the number 1 waiver priority, fab budget, whatever. If you have anything left, drop it on Rashad Penny if he's available, because he is probably the last of the decent options that you're going to see out there. Also, guys like Nico Collins deserve a pickup from that game specifically. But looks like Leonardo is the first one in here. Good morning, Bush. How's it going? Going good. Like I said, the 2 leagues that I clinched a buy in are actually the 2 leagues that were for the most money as well, and the leagues I care most about. So I'm happy that the 2 leagues that I didn't end up having a great season in weren't the most important leagues to me. That trophy behind me is the one I got to defend, and I got a bye week and a number 1 seed to do so. So, yeah, tough week for Gibson. I mean, with Antonio Gibson, man, like the game script really got out of hand for him, obviously, with Dallas scoring a defensive touchdown and just putting the brakes on Taylor Heineke and the Washington offense pretty early in that game. It's going to happen. For Antonio Gibson, the fact that he wasn't really able to make a big impact isn't helpful, obviously, for your fantasy teams. And the fact that he fumbled and proceeded to, I mean, he got benched for a little bit. He did end up coming back into the game once they started to claw their way back into that game, the Washington football team. But they did actually rest him or bench him for the rest of the game until they started scoring again. And then they brought him back out there. So I wouldn't be too worried about Gibson. This week, he has a much easier matchup, I believe. I can't remember exactly who he plays this week, but it is easier than the Cowboys matchup that he played. I think it's like the Eagles or something that he plays this week. So he should be in a better spot. What's going on with Kelce and Hill, man? Almost lost this week because of them. Yeah, those guys definitely disappointed. I couldn't foresee, and nor could anybody, that the Chiefs running backs would score 4 touchdowns in that game. And thankfully for me, because I was playing against Patrick Mahomes. But Kelce, yeah, every time I talk about this guy from a DFS perspective, and every time I write about him in my DFS articles, he always disappoints. I don't know what it is with Travis Kelce. I'm never right on the good weeks, and I'm always wrong on the bad weeks. Like it's brutal. Every time I think he's going to have a great week, he just disappoints. Who should I start if Lamar is out? Jimmy G, Derek Carr, Heineke, leaning Jimmy G because of easier schedule. I think that's a fair assessment, I guess. The only problem with Jimmy G is that they tend to run things through their running back and through Deebo Samuel in the run game as well. So he's not exactly the type of QB that I want to rely on in the fantasy playoffs. I would much rather rely on somebody that can create on their own a little bit more. And to me, that probably screams Heineke, but Heineke is dealing with an injury now. So maybe you don't want to roll with that. I think between Derek Carr and Jimmy G, you could probably just stream matchups between those 2 guys. Are you comfortable playing Dak next week against the Giants? 3 of his last 4 games have been terrible. Yeah, Dak Prescott's been really, really bad lately. And it hasn't been for the reason that I kind of talked about with Jimmy G. It's not because Zeke Elliott's scoring a lot. They're just their offense is kind of anemic right now. Looks like they really missed Tony Pollard this week. But Dak Prescott against the Giants, yeah, I'm still willing to start him. I would say as a top 10 quarterback, top 12 quarterback. I know he's been bad lately, but he does have the ceiling and the obviously the rushing ability, the big play ability, and the weapons around him to still produce big weeks. And the Giants are a pretty anemic team, so I'd imagine he should be able to do some damage against those guys. Packers got that sweet dub last night. It was a great game to go to. Yeah, I bet that game probably would have been really fun to go to. Justin Fields, you want to hear something hilarious about that game? So if you guys watch that game, you know that Khalil Herbert basically returned an onside kick at the end of the game, and it didn't count because in the onside kick rules, if you make the kick and they touch it and then you get the ball, it's dead, apparently. But if you are the one who was onside kick too, you can return it for a touchdown. And we saw, I can't remember who, I think Darrell Williams did it earlier this season. But if Khalil Herbert had been allowed to return that, I bet on the Bears. And I don't usually bet on spreads, but I saw the spread of that game and I was like, dude, plus 12.5 against in a divisional game. I thought it was going to be a bit lower scoring than it ended up being. And then the Bears obviously get out to a 10-0 lead. So I'm like, oh, awesome, man. I got the Bears plus 12.5. They're already up 10-0. Justin Fields looks good. And Justin Fields had a pretty decent game last night. But man, the fact that line didn't hit, and all they had to do also was score a touchdown on that final drive before the onside kick instead of kicking a field goal as well. And I would have been in good shape. So not ideal for me in my sports betting, but I did need Justin Fields to have a big game in our listener dynasty league, Nate. So it is good that he had a great game. Need Murray and Sony to outscore the Rams defense by at least 32. Not finally starting Jones over Dillon. I don't know what that means, but yeah. So Murray and Sony outscoring the Rams D by at least 32. I think you're probably in okay shape there. Murray should have I think Murray could have a big game in this one. I tweeted out actually what I need to happen to make the playoffs in our listener dynasty league. I just want to go over it real quick because it is a lot of things and I couldn't remember it off the top of my head. But what I need is I'm currently in the 8 seed right now. The 6 seed, the 5 seed through 8 seed are all 6-7 or 7-6. And I was 6-7 coming into this week. I've dealt with like just brutal amount of injuries, but my team is starting to finally get healthy a little bit with Julio Jones coming back, with Justin Fields coming back, with Deebo Samuel missed a couple games here and there. I had Saquon Barkley, who obviously was dealing with injuries throughout the year. Those guys are starting to come back for me. And basically, to sneak into the 6 seed, get a playoff spot, I needed 2 of these 3 things to happen tonight. And the first thing, I already took care of business in my matchup. I won by a lot. So I needed to win, obviously, coming into the week. I won. Kyler and OBJ, though, need to score less than 61 for me to beat this one guy on points for. Sony Michel needs to score more than 8.18 PPR points. So that should be pretty doable with the workload he's going to see. And then number 3, DeAndre Hopkins, Matthew Stafford, and James Conner have to outscore Van Jefferson by 19.02. So again, I think that all can happen. I only need 2 of those 3 things to happen, though. So I'm thinking the first 2 are the most likely. Kyler and OBJ score less than 61, and Sony Michel scores more than 8.18 PPR points. Hopefully that will get me into the playoffs, and I should be able to do some damage once I'm in there. Because if I was another team, I wouldn't want to see my team in the playoffs because my team was at like one of the best in the league coming into the year. I just dealt with so many injuries and untimely ones and people leaving early in games and stuff. And I just ended up losing a bunch of stupid games. So going into the playoffs, I should be a little bit more dangerous. Obviously, it's a clean slate. Everybody is 0-0 once you get into the playoffs. So did you see that jump from McLaurin? Huge blow. Yeah, I did see that jump. That was kind of like an awkward looking play. Sounds like he suffered a concussion on that play. Hopefully he's back this week. Terry McLaurin, for my Antonio Gibson's sake, I need him on the field to take away some attention as well. So hopefully Terry McLaurin, for those of you guys that have him, is back this week. Just looks like a concussion that he's dealing with. Saquon or Mitchell rest of season. Also hate to see McLaurin put up a donut. Yeah, McLaurin putting up a donut definitely sucks. Saquon or Mitchell is a close conversation. I tend to lean Saquon just because the workload is a little bit better for him. He does get a little bit more involvement in the receiving game, but when Elijah Mitchell's been on the field, man, it's been hard to deny what he's doing. I'd say just tiebreaker. The fact that Mitchell is injured right now, I would take Saquon, but it is pretty close. Those guys would be like right at that back end, RB1, high end RB2 range of my rankings rest of the season. Do I bench McLaurin for Higgins until further notice? Probably. Yeah, I think I probably would if I were you. Traded away Kittle and Lockett for Kelce, kind of regretting it. Yeah, I probably would be at this point as well, especially seeing that Kittle and Lockett had huge games this week. Thoughts on Fields' performance? I think he looked good, honestly. The touchdowns he threw were kind of just his guys beat the other guys and he made the throws. But the fact that Fields is showing more importantly, the fantasy performances that we are expecting to see from him for those of us who own him in Dynasty, which I earlier this season As you guys probably know, I traded for Justin Fields. I traded away Mac Jones and Jerry Jeudy for Justin Fields in a 3rd-round pick. And as much as I like Mac Jones and think he's going to be a great real-life quarterback, his fantasy ceiling doesn't sniff Justin Fields. It's not even close. And we saw it last night. Justin Fields rushing for 70-something yards, throwing 2 touchdowns. That's exactly what he's capable of doing. He has that Cam Newton potential in terms of a fantasy asset. And once they get him some weapons or some protection, whatever the case is, he should be in a lot better situation. He's got some pieces around him, but he needs a little bit more help. And obviously experience is going to help him out as a rookie quarterback as well. Clyde Edmonds or Amari Cooper for my flex going forward, PPR. So between Clyde Edmonds and Amari Cooper, I'd probably lean Amari Cooper given the PPR format. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and I'll actually pull this up right now. This was one of my takeaways from the weekend, is that it doesn't look like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, even though he had a good game. And I kind of ate some crow on Twitter for saying that he has a generational ability to allow his backups to score touchdowns over him, and then he proceeded to score 2 touchdowns. But with Clyde, it's still not good. Like what you're getting out of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he played 23 snaps yesterday out of a possible 66. And Darrell Williams played 23 snaps. Derek Gore played 20 snaps. Now, part of this could have been because they were blowing them out. So maybe this is just closer between Darrell Williams and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But he only ran 9 routes out of 30. He only had 10 carries and 3 targets. This is not a guy that's getting a huge workload. So yes, he has touchdown upside because he plays for Kansas City. But I'm going to trust Amari Cooper. The volume that he gets versus what Clyde gets is just way, way, way better and way safer. So that's kind of what I'm thinking there. So Nigel left a super chat. Appreciate that. In the playoffs at 9-5, started hot. Now I'm concerned this team can win it all. 12 team. So you got Hurts or Taysom Hill, Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill, Montgomery, CEH, Schultz, flex. You got Hilliard, you got Gallup, you got Parker, Madison, Jamal Williams, Hines, etc. So yeah, I think you're in good shape. I think that team's definitely willing to, or ready to compete. The only thing I have a little bit of pause with is that if you play a team in your league that has some superstar running back talent, that might leave you at a bit of a disadvantage because Montgomery and CEH are fine and they're pretty solid. But if you go up against a team that has Jonathan Taylor and Austin Eckler, or Jonathan Taylor and even a Saquon Barkley or something like that, it's going to be really, really hard to compete against a team like that just because of the guaranteed volume that they're going to get. But appreciate the super chat, Nigel. And speaking of Flet, real quick, giving me an opportunity to plug something. Flet is our first and only member so far. So Flet is a tone setter. We just launched YouTube memberships. For those of you guys that follow other YouTube channels, maybe you know what these are already, but basically becoming a YouTube member will get you a couple perks for this YouTube channel. Basically, you'll get priority reply in comments during live streams or just in general. So it'll ensure that you get an answer out of us when you're looking for start sit questions or whatever the case is. You'll also get some badges and emojis as well. It's only $5 Canadian a month because we are Canadian. We can't actually accept American money on YouTube. So for you guys that are American, it's probably only like $3.25 or something like that. So speaking of, looks like Nigel took the sales pitch. Appreciate that. New member. Definitely appreciate the support there, Nigel. And again, it's literally like $3.25 American a month. It helps us, it helps you support us. And we definitely really appreciate it. You get obviously some priority reply to comments and some emojis and stuff like that if you guys are so inclined. So our Gravy says, worried about Deebo. He's TD or bust right now with how he's being used. Cause for concern or paranoia. It is really interesting how they've shifted his usage, right? Because initially during the season, earlier in the season, Deebo was looking like a stud number 1 wide receiver. Now they're kind of transitioning him into this pseudo running back role that I wasn't very interested in coming into the season. What we're seeing now is what I expected to see out of Deebo Samuel coming into the year. And what we're seeing out of Ayuk right now is what I expected to see coming into the year. And of course, Kittle being Kittle. But I think I'm not worried about Deebo Samuel. I do have him in our listener dynasty league. I'm not really worried whatsoever. I do want to see Elijah Mitchell come back soon though, because I think that's why they're using Deebo Samuel like that. When Elijah Mitchell is on the field, I think they just don't trust their other running backs very much. And with Elijah Mitchell out there, they tend to just move Deebo Samuel back to his original wide receiver role a little bit more. So hopefully Elijah Mitchell can get back out there for Deebo Samuel's sake, because we want him, if you guys have him, you want him out there running routes and not getting carries and stuff. Well, it's nice that he gets some carries here and there. His primary value comes as a wide receiver, especially if you play in any kind of PPR league. I need Kupp and Michelle to outscore Stafford and James Conner by 4. Do I get it done? I think it's definitely possible. It's hard to get Kupp having a huge game without Stafford being a part of that. So that definitely hurts you a little bit. But if Cooper Kupp, if you're in a PPR league, I think you're probably okay here because Cooper Kupp will definitely just rack up the receptions. All you need is probably Michelle to get into the end zone, and then you're probably good. Melvin Gordon right back to 50% snaps, SMH. Yeah, big time SMH there. That is honestly brutal. I got to see what the exact stuff ended up shaking out to be. We have Melvin Gordon, 34 out of 68. Yeah, you're right. Exactly 50% of the snaps. Javonte Williams, 33 out of 68. Routes run. Again, Javonte Williams definitely took the cake running the routes and getting the targets, which is definitely what you want to see from Javonte Williams. Maybe they decided to use Melvin Gordon a little bit more because they were winning this game handedly. Hopefully that's the case. But again, I'm still thinking Javonte Williams is the more valuable back going forward because he does get the receiving role. But you don't want to see Melvin Gordon get 24 carries. That is definitely not what you wanted to see if you were a Javonte Williams manager, as I am, basically. Brock says, locked up picks 102 and 102 to 104. So 102, 103, and 104, and 106 in Dynasty with my rebuilding team. Feeling pretty good. I would be as well. I think that's definitely a great spot to be in. With those picks, you're probably looking at securing a running back, maybe a QB, and then, taking best player available, which will likely be a wide receiver at that 104, 106 spot, most likely. So yeah, definitely good building blocks for a rebuilding team. I'm in a similar situation, I think. I haven't actually looked at what picks I've secured yet. I got to take a look at that after this live stream is over, but I know I'm going to have the 103 based on my own pick because there's a couple other teams tanking as well, and they did it a little bit better than I did. But I also have I think the 105, 106, and then I'll have 3 picks at the end of the first round as well, between 108 and 112. So okay shape there for sure. Which two are my starters through the playoffs? Claypool, Gordon, and Devontae Smith. I would say Devontae Smith for sure is one of your starters, just based on his targets and his usage is just better than the other two guys. Melvin Gordon versus Chase Claypool, definitely a close discussion for sure. It's all going to depend on matchups. Again, you're saying which two are my starters through the playoffs. Again, you got to be willing to play matchups here and there. You can't just say, okay, these are the two I'm going to roll with, and no matter what, I'm going to use them. It's not really how fantasy works. So I would just say play the matchups with those 3 guys, and whoever has the worst matchup in that given week, then probably sit that guy. But I know for a fact, because I have Javonte Williams, that Melvin Gordon is going to have easy matchups throughout the playoffs. So he could be a guy that you're willing to use more so over a guy like Chase Claypool, although the PPR aspect does favor a wide receiver like Claypool. I'm likely to miss playoffs by 20 points. I blame Lamar. Yeah, that definitely sucks. If you guys needed to clinch a playoff spot and Lamar Jackson got hurt, that obviously is brutal. Full PPR, I have D-Hop. They have Kyler and Kupp. I'm up by 50, and I'm still scared. In full PPR, with Cooper Kupp you're going up against, that definitely is concerning. What you need is obviously anything that goes through Kyler to go through D-Hop, because if Kyler runs in 2 touchdowns, then you might be screwed in this game, to be honest. But hopefully D-Hop's able to get out there and have a good game. But the one thing that I would say is going against you is the fact that Jalen Ramsey is going to be glued to DeAndre Hopkins. So that is definitely not ideal for you. Seeing Kittle play like his old self before all the injuries was awesome to see. Yeah, definitely awesome to see. Kittle being Kittle is definitely, you love to see that. And I actually talked about it in my my DFS article 2 weeks ago. I said George Kittle is one of the few tight ends that's capable of having like a 35-point game, right? Like there's not many tight ends out there that can do that. As much as I like, TJ Hawkinson and some of these other guys, like they can't do that. Like only Kyle Pitts, Mark Andrews, George Kittle, and Travis Kelce and Darren Waller can do that. So the fact that George Kittle is having these huge games back-to-back weeks, definitely huge for those of you guys that have him. Yo, Penny, is he for real? I would say, I don't know if he's for real or not, but he's definitely the number 1 pickup this week on waivers. If you guys do need a bit of a boost to your running back core, or just a guy that you want to stash and see what happens with him. He only played about 57% of the snaps, which is still pretty solid. That's like, the pseudo Chris Carson role. We need to know, though, obviously, what is going to happen with Rashad Penny when Adrian Peterson and Travis Homer are back, because they were missing both of those guys in this game. Hopefully, Pete Carroll goes, hey, this guy's actually, pretty good. He looked good. He didn't just score. He obviously looked good, breaking off 2 long touchdowns as well. So Rashad Penny, I would say he's for real for now, at least as a stash. I don't know what his role is going to be going forward. Thankfully, I have him in my home league and I'm on bye, so I get to actually just see how it plays out, and I don't have to risk actually starting him or flexing him this week. So hopefully he can just secure that role for me going into the playoffs and give a nice boost to my bench and my flex spots. Kittle was balling. Yes, sir. Vark Tech. I don't know what that means. Taysom Hill, good through the playoffs. I mean, again, I'm still really sketchy trusting a guy like Taysom Hill. I just don't 100% believe that he's going to be a great quarterback option just because he's just not a very good NFL quarterback and a guy that is not going to provide a whole lot through the air. He pretty much has to rush for 75, 100 yards, rush a touchdown in order to be successful, in order to help your fantasy lineup. So he's a guy that I think is fine through the playoffs, but I would prefer a little bit more safer options. And I would actually prefer a guy like Justin Fields if he's available, because I think Fields can provide a little bit more with his arm and also gives you that same rushing factor. Maybe not quite to the extent of Taysom Hill, but he does have that in his bag of tricks for sure. I saw Williams get a lot of snaps in the first half as well. CEH gets the usage that day 3 running backs in a committee typically get, not the usage you'd expect from a first rounder. Yeah, I totally agree. That's the thing with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I said it coming into the season. I said it last year that all this guy needs to do is be the first round running back that they drafted, and they will give him the usage, right? We saw it with Kareem Hunt. We saw it with other running backs, Damian Williams, that Andy Reid has had, that if you're the dude, he'll give you all the work. But Clyde Edwards-Helaire has he has weaknesses to his game. He's not very good in pass protection. He hasn't been the most consistent running back week in and week out. He has, struggles with fumbles and drops and things like that. So if he was Jonathan Taylor, I have full confidence that he would be a workhorse running back right now. If he was DeAndre Swift in that offense, or J.K. Dobbins, or Cam Akers even, or I'm spacing on the other running back from that class, Gibson, I think that this is a guy that is a workhorse running back for the Kansas City Chiefs and is probably the consensus 101 in Dynasty right now. But he's just not that guy. He's not as good as those running backs. He wasn't as good as those running backs coming out. And a lot of us fell for the receiving ability. He would have been great if he went to a team that would have utilized him as a wide receiver out of the backfield, like Tampa Bay, like, I don't know, whatever other team that you want to insert there. But that's not how Kansas City's using him. And it's unfortunate, obviously, for those of us that drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire in dynasty leagues, but definitely not ideal from what we're seeing right now. Thielen going to be back for the fantasy playoffs. I don't know what the exact diagnosis was on Adam Thielen. It didn't sound like it was overly serious. It sounds more like a week-to-week thing. I would say ankle injuries can be a little finicky, so I wouldn't count on him, but I think there's a chance he could be back for the fantasy playoffs for sure. I'm probably going to ask this question the next couple of weeks, but at my 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, and flex, who do I start? Mixon, Dalvin, Deebo. Okay. So if you're asking for this coming week, I'm going to have to defer you to later in the week when I actually do some research on who these guys are playing, because I have no idea at this point in time. As it stands right now, the guys that I would lean on week in and week out, just based on my view of those players, are Mixon and Dalvin at the running back slots, Deebo, Tyreek, and Keenan Allen at the 2 wide receiver and the flex. But again, matchups, etc., could change things, etc., all that stuff included. So don't ask me these questions on Monday, because I literally have no idea who these guys are playing. But I would say that is who I lean just based on the players and what I know about them at this point. Helps with the boys out there and their growing gambling addiction. No, I don't have a gambling addiction. I'm just I threw $30 on the Bears plus 12.5 just because I thought it was a bad line. So I was trying to take advantage. Obviously didn't exactly work out. What's up? What's up, Javon? Tyler Lockett, 27.4 points, Dam, and Rashad Penny. Yeah, definitely. Those 2 Seahawks definitely carried a lot of people. I got Murray. I'm a win. Yeah, hopefully. Do we trust Penny for playoffs? Again, I'm fortunate that I don't have to make this decision because I have a bye week, but I'm probably going to have him ranked, around my RB like 25 to 30 range next week. It's all going to depend on the status of Adrian Peterson and Travis Homer and stuff. I hope Pete Carroll just says, hey, we're just going to give Penny the crack at the Chris Carson role, because he's never really had it at this point in his career. He was a first-round running back in 2018, and he has not stayed on the field this whole time. So maybe that makes Pete Carroll hesitant to trust him, giving him more than 15 to 20 touches a game. But if you get 15 to 20 touches out of Penny, I think he's going to be somewhat valuable. He just had a really, really easy matchup this week. So I don't want to read too much into him having a huge game if he has, tougher matchups going forward. Hollywood going to show what he did earlier in the season. Yeah, Hollywood Brown's been very disappointing as of late, especially considering he's still getting pretty good usage from a target perspective. It's just unfortunate that you're not seeing the production carry over. He had 7 targets this week. He had 7 targets the week before. And then 4 weeks prior to the last 2 weeks, he had double-digit targets in every single game. Now, Hollywood Brown had, he struggled against the Browns as well. So maybe the Browns just kind of have his number and he might have a little bit easier time going forward. But with Lamar Jackson out, like, I don't know if he's going to be out for the rest of the season or whatever the case is with Lamar Jackson. But if Lamar's not on the field, then I definitely severely downticks Hollywood's production. Please fire all the Broncos coaches. I don't care if they won. It's the Lions. Yeah, picture. I lucked out with Aaron Jones and CEH. Neither got a lot of touches, but both made the most of the limited work what they got. Yeah, that's definitely elite when that happens. Big fan of the channel. Appreciate that, Midnight. Think Mitchell and Waller will be back next week. I would say Waller's probably more likely back, but Mitchell, it sounds like he was dealing with a whole lot of injuries. So we'll have to see kind of what happens with Elijah Mitchell's practice reports throughout the week this year. Do you foresee any teams sitting guys for real playoffs or next season like Kittle or Devontae Adams for real? Oh, okay. So I see what you mean. Usually that only happens in week 18. So, or like the final week of the season, which if you guys have a week 18 fantasy championship, you should probably change that because teams will, if they have nothing to play for, maybe they already have a bye locked up or, they can't change their seating or anything like that, or there's just no reason for them to play their starters. They might rest their guys in week 18, but in week 17, I don't think anybody's going to be resting their players for real playoffs or for next season, like Kittle or Devontae Adams. Like those guys, their teams still need to win right now. So they're not going to make those decisions right now. Green Bay's chasing a bye for number 1 seed for the NFC. The Seahawks are chasing the Arizona Cardinals and the Los Angeles Rams in their own division, as well as a wild card spot. So I don't anticipate any of those guys being sat. All those 18th round best ball penny picks paying off. Yeah, I actually had a couple best ball leagues where I had Rashad Penny as well. So that is definitely elite. So how do I become a member? For those, I'll add it to the description of videos after this going forward. So it's very easy for you guys. But if you want to become a member, all you have to do is go to the channel homepage, and where you would see subscribe, it should say join right beside where it says subscribe, and you just join. Again, it's $5 Canadian a month. You get some cool perks. You get badges like Tyler Flett here has his badge saying that he's a member. I'll make these a little bit more visually appealing after I'm done with this because you can customize the emojis and stuff. So I'll definitely do that after this. But yeah, you'll get priority response on comments and live streams, et cetera, et cetera. So definitely appreciate the interest in becoming a member, Figs. What do you think is going to happen with the Rams backfield the rest of the season? Honestly, dude, I have no idea. I think Sony Michel is going to get the work tonight, obviously, because Darrell Henderson is on the COVID list and is out for this game. But the rest of the season, I have no idea. When Darrell Henderson comes back, I tend to think that Darrell Henderson's still going to be involved to some degree. I don't know if it's going to be Darrell Henderson gets his old job back. I don't know if Sony Michel is now the lead back. I don't know if it's a 50-50 split. I honestly have no idea what they're going to do. But I would say if Sony Michel has another great game tonight, then it probably cements him as the starter the rest of the season, if I had to guess. But again, I'm not Sean McVay. I have no idea what's going to happen. I've been rolling with Carr because I know he won't lose games for anyone. Should I look to stream in the playoffs? Yeah. I did a video a couple weeks ago called Mustaches for the Playoffs. Not mustaches, Mustaches for the playoffs. And I talked about Tua. I talked about Carr. Talked about Jimmy G as potential options there. So I don't hate any of those options. If you want to go with any of them, I think you're probably in decent shape if you are streaming heading into the playoffs. Man, I can't handle this DK production. I know you can't bench him, but these low floor points, I just can't handle it anymore. I totally agree with you. DK has been really, really frustrating, especially because he catches a touchdown that was called back on a holding penalty. He also had a couple other big plays called back from penalties and things like that in this game. Again, it's going to come with DK Metcalf. I'm not sitting him heading into the fantasy playoffs, but you got to downgrade him to like a mid wide receiver 2 at this point because the floor simply isn't there. He typically was the high floor player of the 2 Seahawks receivers, but we're just not seeing it right now. Any news on AB, given you're a Bucs insider? Have heard rumors he may be cut. I think he would have been cut already if he was cut. I don't think he's going to get cut anymore. If he was going to be cut, I think it would have happened the week he was suspended. They would have just cut bait with him. No harm, no foul. But they're probably just waiting for it to blow over at this point. Nobody cares that he's not getting cut anymore for breaking the rules. And also, people got to remember that it wasn't just Antonio Brown. It was Mike Edwards as well. And also, I think another person as well. But Mike Edwards, the Bucs' third safety, plays like nickel. It plays like a kind of like a honey badger role in their defense, and he's been a really valuable piece of their defense as well. I think he leads the team in interceptions right now. So they're not going to cut Antonio Brown, because if they cut Antonio Brown, they also have to cut Mike Edwards, and they're not going to do that because he's on a rookie contract and he's a good young player that they don't want to cut bait with. So I'm thinking they're probably just going to hold on to Antonio Brown. I believe next week is the final game of his suspension, if I'm not mistaken. So he should be back in time for week 16. If you guys do have him in the fantasy playoffs, maybe you have a bye week or something like that, and you have Antonio Brown on your bench. SMH still in denial. JK Bush. Yeah, no worries. Next week, the Cards go up against the Lions. Would it be good to start both Connor and Edmonds, since Williams and Gordon gave me 25 points each yesterday? So you started both Broncos running backs. That is definitely a bold call, but it definitely worked out for you. I would say, depending on your options, I don't mind starting both of those guys. But if this is the same league, I would rather start one of those Broncos running backs over Chase Edmonds next week for now. But again, we'll have to see what happens tonight with Chase Edmonds and James Conner, how they kind of deploy them, and see if their roles change at all. Because maybe now that James Conner has been very productive, when Chase Edmonds is out of the lineup, that they go back to just using Chase Edmonds as a third down back, and they use James Conner in that Kenyon Drake role from last year. I could definitely see that happening. I mean, Penny was playing the Texans. He will probably struggle against a better run D. Yeah, again, I can't take away the fact that he did look good, and he'll probably be semi-productive against another run defense, but will he break off 2 long touchdowns against another defense? Probably not. Like, the Houston Texans are terrible, so especially against the run. So Rashad Penny, again, I'm excited to pick him up if I have him on my waiver wire, but I'm not going, oh, this is an RB1 rest of the season or an RB2 the rest of the season. I'm more of like a wait and see approach. If you don't have better options, then I wouldn't advise putting them into your lineup going forward. Whoops, you already mentioned that. Yeah, I definitely did. I got Mitchell, Swift, and Waller. Any chance all 3 play next week? So Mitchell and Waller, I would say, are definitely in play next week. I'm not really sure how their practices are going to go this week. I'd say they're both like 50-50 for playing next week. DeAndre Swift is a very, very interesting case, because there were reports on Saturday that he's a candidate to go on IR. I heard Adam Schefter and some other reliable sources tweet that out, but he hasn't been put on IR yet. So I'm wondering what they're actually going to do with DeAndre Swift, because if he was a candidate to go on IR, I feel like we would have gotten a report shortly thereafter saying he's been placed on IR. And that hasn't happened yet. And they, in fact, played a whole game and haven't put him on IR yet. So I'm not really sure what's happening with DeAndre Swift. I hope they don't shut him down, because I do have him in my home league and I could really use him heading into the playoff run. And I have a bye week this week. So even if he misses this week and comes back in week 16, I'd be cool with that. But I really hope he doesn't go on IR. That's all I'm hoping for. But I think it is probably only like a 20% chance that he plays next week if he's a candidate to go on IR for sure. Do we care about Jeff Wilson at this point? I mean, not really. Like, he's been super unreliable and unproductive when he gets a chance. And not only that, but he might be the lead running back, but Deebo Samuel is splitting carries with him and splitting work out of the backfield with him. So if Elijah Mitchell is out, I'm still willing to throw Jeff Wilson into my lineup as like a high-end RB3, but nothing more than that. And I think Elijah Mitchell could be back this week. The joy of having JT, Brady, and Kittle on my team. Yeah, those are some high ceiling options that you got. Don't know if you talked about Gibson yet, but takeaways from the game, I'm assuming he's not 100% healthy and a shitty game script still should get pass catching work, right? I'm just going to chalk this one up to game script and the fact that, man, the Cowboys defense is really good against the run, especially. So I knew this was going to be a bad matchup. The Cowboys are like a top 3 run defense and rush defense DVOA. And Gibson had been feasting on some bad run defenses the last couple weeks. And this week he has another easy matchup. So he should be back on track. JD McKissic will probably be back this week. So again, Antonio Gibson's still a guy that I'm willing to start as a high-end RB2. You're Canadian? Yes, I am Canadian. I am from Ontario. Honestly, I hate Melvin Gordon at this point. Yeah, I agree. I forgot to bench Madison and he got more points than Gibson in non-PPR. Yeah, that must have sucked on Thursday though, when you're like, oh my God, I sat Gibson and Madison only dropped 2.5 points or whatever he ended up dropping. So definitely good news for you that Gibson had a brutal game as well. For week 16 and 17, do you like Burrow or Hurts better? Burrow at home against Baltimore and Kansas City. Hurts home against the Giants and Washington. That's pretty tough. I think both of those options, honestly, I think I would go Burrow in week 16 and Hurts in week 17, to be honest, because Baltimore is really, really bad against the pass. I think Burrow can take big time advantage of Baltimore. And I think the last time that they played, he threw for 400 yards and had 3 touchdowns against Baltimore. And since then, they lost Marlon Humphrey for the rest of the year, and their secondary is just completely decimated right now. So I actually like Burrow next week against Baltimore, and then I would play Hurts against Washington in week 17 if as it currently stands. Now things could change here and there, but that's kind of where I lean so far. I think the Eckler ankle didn't look serious, but I think he's going to play this Thursday. I'm hoping it's not a serious high ankle sprain. A lot of fantasy doctors that I saw did speculate that it could be a high ankle sprain. The fact that they play Thursday night is definitely not a good sign. There could be incentive if he's dealing with an ankle injury. Usually when you have ankle injuries, they swell up. So if I had to guess, I would say he's probably not going to play this Thursday. Could come back 10 days from now or 10 days from that Thursday game. The following Sunday. So if I was an Eckler fantasy manager, that's probably what I'd be hoping for, but definitely not what you want to see heading right into the fantasy playoffs. A guy go out with an ankle injury that could keep him out for a bit of time. As a Madison owner, it always seemed like Cook died when he gets hurt and then magically comes back 2 weeks later and gets like 50 points. Yeah, he is really like severe when he goes down, right? Like Dalvin Cook does, he winces in pain. He like rolls around the whole like 9 yards and then he comes back like a week later. It does tend to happen quite a bit, but apparently like, separating your shoulder definitely got to hurt a lot, especially when you have a history of it like Cook. So definitely makes sense there. What's up, baby? What's up, Nick? Eckler is a low ankle sprain. Okay, yeah. So we did see, even if it is a low ankle sprain, we saw Clyde Edwards-Helaire miss a couple games with a low ankle sprain. We saw somebody else earlier in the season, Miles Sanders, missed a couple games with a low ankle sprain. So I think probably return to play for Austin Eckler is you're hoping he's back week 16 is what I would say is your first initial. I don't think he's going to play on Thursday if he has a low ankle sprain. How does it feel to be the best Canadian fantasy football player? I don't know. DF Bean Counter on Twitter is also Canadian. So he's also up there. And I know Jacob Sanderson from Player Profiler, he's also a Canadian as well. And of course, the lad himself, Danny, is also a Canadian fantasy football player. But I definitely appreciate that. What's Kareem Hunt's injury looking like? I think he's going to be fine. Based on what I saw, it looks like Kareem Hunt could have came back into the game, but they were already winning by quite a bit. So maybe that's why they didn't bring him back into the game. And of course, they have Dearness Johnson, who looks like a pretty capable backup so far from what we've seen this year. So I think Kareem Hunt's probably going to be fine. I don't expect him to miss much time. You think it's a good strategy to hold Miami, Chargers, and Tampa Bay defenses? They all have decent matchups in week 16 and 17 with me having a playoff bye. I would only hold 2 defenses maximum. If you guys are wondering how many defenses you should hold heading into the fantasy playoffs, 2 is the max that you should hold. In my opinion, I would rather so I know Miami and Miami has a good matchup, I believe, in week 16, and then Tampa Bay has the Jets in week 17. So you have a bye in week 7 or in week 15. I would probably only hold Miami in week 16 or whoever Chargers Miami, whatever one has the better matchup in week 16, and then drop the other one and use Tampa Bay in week 17 because that's probably what I'd be looking to do. And honestly, you could probably just use Tampa Bay only because they have the Saints this week. They have Carolina in week 16, and then they have the Jets in week 17. Those matchups are all very favorable for fantasy defense. You got Taysom Hill, who's thrown 4 interceptions, who threw 4 interceptions on Thursday night 2 weeks ago. I don't even remember how many he threw this week. I don't know. I wasn't really watching that game a lot, to be honest, because it was kind of a dumpster fire. But then you have Cam Newton, who's been benched like 3 times. And then you have Zach Wilson, who obviously is going to be without a lot of his weapons as well. So, I think Tampa Bay, honestly, is a fine defense. If you want to just roll with them and drop the other 2 and pick up some backup running backs or whatever, then I'd go ahead and do that. But if there's nobody available on your waiver wire, then I'm okay holding 2 defenses for sure. Is there a CFL fantasy league? Probably. I don't play. CFL's a fucking joke, in my opinion. I know it is. I know it's Canadian football and I'm Canadian, but it doesn't do it for me. Robbie Anderson is back. The fuck? What are we doing about DJ Moore? Yeah, I don't know what the fuck Robbie Anderson's doing. I don't know why the hell he's involved to some degree for whatever reason. But what we're doing about DJ Moore, again, you're just going to hesitantly start him as like a back-end wide receiver too. Hope that Cam Newton can get a little bit better. I don't really know what to do with DJ Moore at this point. If you have better options, I'm okay sitting him. Why is Josh Jacobs all of a sudden getting the targets we've always wanted him to get? Honestly, I don't know. Maybe it was John Gruden. John Gruden, obviously, since he resigned, Josh Jacobs has been getting a lot more involvement in the passing game. And obviously, Kenyon Drake being out for the year now definitely helps with that as well. So Josh Jacobs, yeah, suddenly getting a workhorse role. Didn't see that coming into the year. And Josh Jacobs, again, his role was huge last week. He had 47 of 63 snaps, 30 of the 49 routes for the Raiders, had 6 targets, only 9 carries. Obviously, it was a horrible game script. Didn't expect him to get too many carries in this one, but yeah, he's looking like a guy that's going to be very helpful for people down the stretch. I'm also Canadian. Yes, Fled is also Canadian. Yo, what's up, boys? What's up, Ron? Fled is the best, in my opinion. Sup, Ron the GOAT. Is Allen Robinson droppable in 12 teams? I scooped him up, but now I see why he was dropped. Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think he is definitely droppable. If you don't want to roster Allen Robinson, there's no reason to. He's been really, really bad. What's up, Nick? Good call on Monty over Michelle yesterday. Won me my week. Garbage time fantasy points. I mean, Michelle could definitely have a big game this week as well. So I wouldn't jump the gun too much on that one. I have Kelce, or I have Dak, Kelce, Hill really letting me down the past 2 weeks. Should I be concerned in the playoffs with them or not? I probably wouldn't be. I'm Dak a little bit. I'm a little concerned about Dak, but not really. Like Kelce and Hill, I'm just kind of willing to throw that one out. When you score all those times like the Chiefs did with their running backs on defense, et cetera, sometimes you just get screwed, and Kelce and Hill just don't have good games because everybody else, the role players, stepped up and contributed. But I'm not worried about those two specifically. Dak, I'm a little bit more concerned with, but I'm still not overly concerned with him. DK Metcalf, what the fuck? It's starting to seem like Russ just don't like him and gives him nothing but crap targets. Yeah. DK Metcalf has been really, really strange these past couple of weeks. Obviously, with Russ, he's been playing kind of poorly recently, and the targets are going to Lockett, and they're also running the ball well, obviously, yesterday with Rashad Penny. So DK Metcalf, again, I think you just got to roll with the punches with him. Hopefully he turns it around. But if you have better options than DK Metcalf, I'm okay sitting him. But I highly doubt that most of you guys have better options than DK Metcalf because you probably drafted him very high. Chubb is frustrating. Yeah, Chubb is very frustrating. If you guys have Nick Chubb, you probably are not happy with the draft pick that you made because most people would have crowned Nick Chubb as the safe pick, right? Coming into the season, we knew what Nick Chubb was. We know he's one of the best running backs in the league. We knew that he's been a fantasy producer the last couple of years, but the thing with Nick Chubb, and we were talking about this all offseason, and I know other channels were as well, Nick Chubb is a low ceiling option, and he's a low usage option. He's an outlier, basically. The type of role that he has is not extremely valuable. It is the type of role that a guy like Rashad Penny saw yesterday. It's the type of role that a guy like Clyde Edwards-Helaire sees. It's just that Nick Chubb is so good that he was able to overcome it for the most part, but it's going to make him more inconsistent. It's going to make him less likely to have a top 5 season because you're never going to see that elite ceiling out of Nick Chubb, similar to what we saw from Joe Mixon for a whole bunch of years until this year. So that's kind of my thoughts on Nick Chubb. He was not a guy I was buying into. I have very, very little shares of Nick Chubb. I have him maybe like 2% owned in best ball. I drafted him nowhere in fantasy leagues this season because I kind of knew what I was getting at this point. I knew Kareem Hunt would be involved, and we even saw Kareem Hunt get injured for a while, and Nick Chubb still wasn't an elite fantasy option. He's only had like 3 or 4 games this year where he's been a big time asset to your lineup. May have to roll with Waddle over Marquise Brown as my wide receiver 2 throughout the playoffs. I don't think that's a horrible decision at all with the way Waddle's playing right now, especially the schedule that the Dolphins have. They have a pretty easy one. Michelle probably will end up more than Monty, but I already won, so it's fine. Yeah, true. Grab Jakeem Grant. No, don't grab Jakeem Grant. He caught a lucky long touchdown, and he also had a kickoff return. I'm not chasing that for sure. Fellas, went against your advice for the first time yesterday, went with Hill instead of Dak, and it ended up working out with that late touchdown, first round bye and regular season champ. Thank you all so much. Yeah, again, you have more balls than me, dude. I would have started Dak Prescott for sure. But congrats to you. Congrats on the regular season champ. I myself also a regular season champ this week. And Blake says, who is the top wide receiver off the board in redraft next year? If Green Bay has Rodgers and Devontae Adams still, then I'm okay just saying it's Devontae Adams yet again. If Devontae Adams goes elsewhere, if Aaron Rodgers goes elsewhere, then that obviously will change things. But the top wide receiver off the board, in my opinion, probably should be like a toss-up between a couple guys. It should either be like a Tyreek Hill, who we've seen kind of do it already. Could be a Stephon Diggs. Could also be some of these young guys. Could be Justin Jefferson. Could be Jamar Chase. Could be kind of anybody in there. I don't think, a guy like Deebo Samuel is necessarily going to be quite the number 1 wide receiver off the board, but definitely all those guys are probably in consideration for me with the high end of the wide receiver ranks next year. Thoughts on Jonathan Taylor versus New England next week? We're going to hear it all week. The classic Bill Belichick takes away your number 1 weapon narrative. is going to strike Jonathan Taylor next week. And to be honest, I don't think it fucking matters because Jonathan Taylor is too damn good. So I think Jonathan Taylor's going to be just fine next week. Maybe he doesn't have a 40-point game. Maybe he only goes for like 105 yards rushing on 23 carries, and he has like 3 receptions for 40 yards and a touchdown or something like that. But he'll probably still have 20 points. I wouldn't be shocked at all if he's in great shape. So yeah, I talked about already securing the first place W in my league. This is how it ended up happening. I came into the week 9-4. My two, me and another guy were tied at 9-4 at the top of the charts, but he had more points for than I did. And so he was in first and I was in second, but we were both in position for a bye this week as long as we took care of business. He actually ended up losing and I won. So I'm 10-4, top of the leaderboards, dropped 143 points this week. Still have Sony Michel to play too. I got Tom Brady, Antonio Gibson, Javonte Williams, Devontae Adams, T. Higgins, Marvin Jones, Kyle Pitts, and then Rashad Penny, like I said, in my flex spot as well. Somehow was able to make that call. I actually had Godwin Igwe in my lineup for a good majority of the time, and I'm so glad I shifted to Rashad Penny at the last minute. I'm really excited I did that, but yeah, I definitely dummied the guy that I played this week. He was kind of out of it, so just needed that for sure. Patterson seems to be fading. Yeah, Cordero Patterson definitely had a down week. I wouldn't read too much into that because Cordero Patterson hadn't been good against Carolina the first time either. And I kind of saw that coming again, which is why I wasn't really excited about him. I actually want to look at the bets that me and Danny made this week. So we had Montgomery versus Aaron Jones. Obviously, Aaron Jones won that one. Then we had Montgomery versus Cordero Patterson. Maybe somebody could give me an update. I don't even know who ended up winning that. I think David Montgomery would have won that. I'm going to look right now. David Montgomery versus Cordero Patterson. Holy shit, he beat him by like 0.2 points. So that is definitely ideal. Sony Michel versus Cordero Patterson. Obviously, that'll be decided tonight. And then DK Metcalf versus T. Higgins. I took DK Metcalf. He took T. Higgins. So definitely took the L on that one. But I'm glad I took the L on that one because I have T. Higgins on my team. So Rashad Penny, or Flet says he getting shut down for sure. Yeah, I mean, good luck. Jonathan Taylor's a tough task. Rashad Penny, a good pickup for flex. My other flexes would be Hilliard, Gallup, Devontae Parker, Madison. I'm probably more willing to start a guy like Michael Gallup over Rashad Penny, but I'm okay. Again, I'm still okay picking up Rashad Penny. If you wanted to drop Dontrell Hilliard or Devontae Parker for the upside of a guy like Rashad Penny, I'm okay doing that and just using Michael Gallup for the time being until we see maybe another week of Rashad Penny in the starting role, and then you can use him in week 16, or you want to risk it and throw him in there next week. But again, I'm definitely willing to pick up Rashad Penny, drop the rest of my fab on him, whatever, but I'm hesitant to just throw him into my lineup as like a locked and loaded RB2 the rest of the season. I just don't think it's that simple with Rashad Penny. I think we got to be a little bit more cautiously optimistic. Deebo is the next Patterson. Yeah, it definitely could be. I almost sat Javonte, scared of the split with Gordon, and the split did happen, but Javonte scored 2 touchdowns. Thankfully, yeah, they just fucking put the brakes on him there for sure. Pittman may be a sleeper for DFS next week. He is number 1 in win rate against press man coverage this year, going against the Pats. I don't know if I want to fuck around with JC Jackson, man. Guy's been playing out of his mind. And he held Stephon Diggs to like nothing 2 weeks ago. And I know the weather was bad, but I'm probably not going to mess around with Pittman going up against the Patriots. But it is possible they shut down Jonathan Taylor and they have to rely on the passing game a little bit more. But I'm not excited about Pittman against the Pats next week. Ron says McLaurin, Elijah Moore, and AJ Brown all hurt. That definitely sucks. Who do I pick up off waivers for the playoffs? Gage, Gallup, Judy are my best options. I'm probably still going with Judy, even though like I don't like feel great about it. But him and Gallup is pretty close. If you wanted to go with Gallup over Judy, it's probably a toss up. Again, I'm not chasing Russell Gage. I know he had a big play in this one, but I'm still hesitant on that dude. I don't think he's gonna do a whole lot the rest of the season. Scott says DK is killing me. Yeah, definitely. Definitely killing a lot of people out there. So it's 12:05 right now, PM Eastern time. Getting kind of hungry for lunch, so I'm probably going to sign out of here. Like I said, if you guys are interested in becoming members, you can do that by going to our YouTube channel right now and hitting the join button, what Nigel did, who is a member right now. So appreciate that, Nigel, again. And you can hit the join button. You'll get personalized emojis, which I will create after I'm done this. So they'll look a lot cooler than what Nigel has beside him. And then you'll also get priority response to comments during live streams, as well as at the bottom of videos as well. And you'll also get the ability, and I didn't even mention this yet, to vote in polls. And we'll also probably be running some members only live streams at some point in the off season, or maybe we'll do that next year or whatever the case is. But nonetheless, definitely, if you guys support what we're doing, it costs you like a Starbucks coffee a month for you to help support us. And we definitely, truly appreciate that. So I will sign off of here after these last two comments that we have. Nigel says Schultz or Hooper for the playoffs. I'm still going with Dalton Schultz. I think he's a lot more reliable, and I trust the offense a lot more. And then Rolla says DST week 15, Rams at home versus Seattle, or Kansas City at Los Angeles Chargers, Rams at home versus Seattle. I'm going to take Rams at home versus Seattle. I think they're a better defense than Kansas City, and I think they're just the matchup's a lot easier. Blake says not fantasy related, but what happened to that finance job you said you got a while ago? Honestly, I quit it after about a month and a half. I realized that this is what I wanted to do with my time, the rest of my life. This is my career that I'm trying to build. So I decided to go out on my own and kind of freelance what I'm doing right now. I would have made a lot more money in my finance job. Definitely would have been, pretty well off right now, but I wasn't enjoying it. I knew it wasn't what I wanted to do. I knew this is where I wanted to be. So I decided to quit and kind of slum it out in my mom's basement a little bit longer until I, build my career. So that's basically what happened with that. It's nothing, against the company I was working for, just not what I wanted to do with my life. So Ron says, have a good day. Yeah, appreciate that. Have a good day, guys. Appreciate you for joining me. Tune in tonight before the game. We'll be live for about half an hour, 45 minutes as usual as well. Peace out, guys.